ahead and introduce themselves briefly. Go ahead and start right here.
Thomas Gilbert is. There we go. Thomas Gilbert, I'm the radio system manager for the local P25 700 megahertz system in this region. I work with Brad with the Council of Governments. I'm also an employee of the City of Huntsville Fire Department for I've been for 21 and a half years. So I kind of have the unique perspective of knowing the back end and how it affects the boots on the ground.
So my name is Harald Lubin, representing the TCCA, Critical Communications Association. This is an association of all stakeholders in critical communications, end users, operators, members, and so on. And we are promoting and supporting the ecosystem for standard-based technologies. And
hi everyone, my name is Kurt Surratt. I'm a graduate student at Mays Business School here at Texas A&M. And I've been working for Texas A&M's Internet to Technology Evaluation Center this year, making sure that their new next-gen 911 testing laboratory is going to be compliant with ISO standard 17025.
I'm Jeff Telford. I think uniquely have the opportunity to be on 2 panels. So I'm the Chief Product Officer at Javari. We produce WebEOC, which is how most people here know us. We've got other products such as EM Resource that are at the state public health level that give bad information, availability to key resources inside the hospitals as well. Great joining me.
Hello, my name is Ian Carpenter, CEO of Validate. We're a testing company based in Boston. I've been in the testing field, network testing for over 30 years, and starting off in actually base station development and Nokia. Yeah, we've developed a whole range of different test suites and different test systems, including P25, ISSI performance, we've got 5G, and we've got mission critical, which is all test suites.
Okay, thank you guys. And you listen to that and who these guys are. I'm still amazed they let me in the room, much less give me a microphone and talk. So it is an honor to be with you. It's an honor to be able to visit with y'all and talk about the 4-letter S word today, standards. And so it's a point of contention, but I think it's something that needs to be discussed. And I'm glad we get to talk about it a little bit more today. So just to remind everybody, our panelists, we're going to navigate today the nuanced landscape, the role of standards and interoperability in the context of emergency response and national security. So I want to reflect real quick on 3 events, and it's usually events of magnitude that create change, especially in public safety. And the first one was 9/11. That had a dramatic impact on our country, the way we live, the way we do business, and definitely in emergency response. You look at TSA checkpoints at the airport. We also look at the way our communications operate. We've heard a bunch already about FirstNet and where FirstNet has come from and where it's going. So that's story number 1. The other one is the wildfires from the 1970s out of California. Incident command came out of that. Major events that took place, and forever as public safety changed because of that. And I want to talk about one more, and it's a little bit further back. And I'm going to read this because of the facts. I don't want to gloss over it. But the Great Baltimore Fire in 1904 was catastrophic. And it happened on February 7th, 1904. It destroyed 1,500 buildings, including homes, businesses, and landmarks. There's over $100 million. Today's money, that's in the billions. So outside of that, firefighters in neighboring cities, they worked tirelessly to contain the fire, but lack of adequate firefighting equipment, water supply, standardization, as far as joint efforts, created this huge event. And on the back side of that, they had to get real and address how we operated inside of the fire service. They read about my background. It's easy for me to talk about, but it's very applicable to the standards that we're going to talk about today. It seems so simple because we take it for granted today, but you can go to almost any fire department, grab any fire truck, you can hook up a fire hose from any fire station. That wasn't the case back then. It had to be a standardization. Pride and ego had to get out of the way, and we had to come to an agreement going, will take a 2.5 inch, and this 2.5 inch will hook up to any other 2.5 inch fire truck in the United States. So I'm setting the stage with that. I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna say, we're talking about standardization today, looking through the lens of needed change in operations, and we need to go forward. What does that look like? So Harold, I'm gonna start with you. You traveled the furthest, so I'm gonna give you the first set of questions. How many miles was that? Do you know the miles, or just the hours?
Sorry, not no miles, kilometers, I don't know the kilometers.
He definitely got the air miles. All right, so you very much got an outside viewpoint of public safety operations. And, you know, looking inside of the United States, what do you see as the greatest opportunity to improve or enhance the current state of emergency communications in the US?
I see you did it greatly first that here. You have a nationwide network, far ahead of many other countries in the world. I mean, in Europe, we have 1 or 2 countries now with solutions. You already have it in operation nationwide. What I see a little bit different is that it's not really standard based. Or the network itself is standard based, but you allow a lot of proprietary PTT applications on the network, which in the end doesn't really fulfill the goal of FirstNet to have one nationwide network ensuring interoperability between the agencies. And if different agencies use different proprietary PTT applications, they can still not talk with each other. So I see this as one point, and I really don't understand if this is the case, why it's not mandated to use standard-based MCPTT for everyone in FirstNet. Because from a European perspective, there's no discussion in Europe. I mean, if a country goes to a broadband solution for public safety, this is MCPTT, no discussion. And this is, in my view, the only way to really ensure interoperability, that everyone is using one grid standard.
Okay, well, you kind of stole my thunder on the second question out of that. What would your recommendations be to go ahead and to step forward? If you were going to say, United States, I can push this button for you, what button would you push for us to fix what we have?
Oh, it's a difficult question because I don't think I'm in a position to make any recommendations to your.
You have the microphone.
I try to get rid of all these proprietary PTT applications. Every one of us is using a cell phone. If you go to another country, you switch it on and it works. Everyone takes it for granted. But this is only because it's a standard and everyone is using this. If you're not using the standard, you run into difficulties. Agencies using different applications, different technologies, they cannot come for help to another agency in another region. This will not work. So the only solution is really go for standards.
Okay, well, we're probably gonna ask this in a different way and make you give us the same answer, but as far as we're discussing interoperability in depth this week, and in relations to standards or lack of, what do you view as a leading threat to achieving true end-to-end interoperability?
Leading threat. I mean, I would say there are always 2 parties to proprietary solutions. One offering it, the vendors, but if they can make business, you cannot really blame them. But the other party is always the one buying the proprietary solution. And if you have a proprietary solution bought and using it, it's almost impossible to get rid of it anymore. It's and there may be hidden costs. I mean, in the first place, the proprietary solution may be cost effective, but there will be a lot of hidden costs if you really want to make it interoperable, want to connect it with other solutions. Then somebody has to pay for these connections for this cost. That's what I see. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm sure you're gonna have questions for Harold. I'm gonna try to leave some time at the end of this so you can ask questions to the panel. But I'm gonna go ahead and jump to, if you can hand the microphone to Kurt. I'm gonna throw some balls at you and let you see how you do with it here.
All right.
All right, so Kurt, what methodologies or tools will you be implementing to monitor and maintain ISO 17025 compliance within your testing lab for the next gen 911 technologies?
Sure, so just to give a quick overview of that, so what ITEC is trying to do is we're going to be testing the next gen 911 technologies. So currently 911 is focused on voice calls from devices, and the next gen 911 will be voice calls, images, text. It'll support multimedia from any device that's connected to via IP. So that's a big change from the original 911 protocols. So our laboratory is going to be ISO 17025 certified, and that standard means that we're going to be certifying as general conformance test laboratories. So some of the tools that we're implementing for that, we've talked to sister laboratories here on campus that are also ISO 17025 certified, and they're very manually based. They have paper documents, things like that. So some of the things we're going to implement to speed up that process and make it so that it can expand in the future if we choose to include more testing technologies. We're going to be using AWS for virtual machines that are going to be used during the testing process. We're also making use of SharePoint in controlling the documents that are going to be involved in the quality process for making sure these tests come out and are accurate. And we're also going to be making use of possibly automated screenshots on these virtual machines to capture the testing environment specifics, so that if something goes wrong in the testing process, we can go back and see what happened and provide that to the client.
Okay. Well, so you kind of talked about it a little bit, but what challenges have you encountered in aligning your lab practices with the ISO 10725 standards, and in particular in the context of emergency communication testing?
So the biggest challenge is that this is groundbreaking new technology that we're going to be testing, and it also requires a lot of different components within the next gen 911. So we have different elements of the system that need to be talking to each other, and determining where the edge of our scope for testing is going to be has been a challenge, as well as determining what parts of ISO 17025 are actually not applicable to our testing situation. So we've been in a lot of conversations with the accreditation body, A2LA, to determine what do we really need to be including here in our scope.
All right, so how do you see the ISO 17025 compliance contributing to an improved interoperability? And what are you hoping to see as a result of this alignment with the emergency response system?
So there's kind of two components to the benefits of doing this. So first of all, we're doing this as essentially a pilot program. We want to see other universities potentially being able to look at what we've done and see what we've created for our document management system and our accreditation, and possibly apply it to either their own technologies or possibly also next gen 911 at those laboratories. Additionally, another benefit is obviously making sure that these components in the system are all conformant with the standards. So if you go to a vendor like Verizon or AT&T, all of them are going to be working together so that no matter what device you use that connects to the internet, you can access calling 911 or even texting 911 in the future.
Okay, I appreciate that. Ian, let's go ahead and jump to you. I've got a couple questions or a few questions for you. And so through standards and through conformance, all these different things, do you have any stories where you've seen things work out well, and maybe the other side of that coin where you've seen it not work out so well?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is to have clear standards, and that's quite a challenge, right? Because depending on if things go too slowly, then some of these things just kick in, which is it's a little strange how it works. But if you start by sort of defining a protocol, defining a system, and then you start to have some of the larger vendors when they start to implement that, and some of the other guys are kind of waiting for standards to settle down a little bit. If you wait too long, then what sort of starts to happen? People start to try to monetize the investment they've already made, so that the larger vendors will start to try to sell those systems, which might not be quite standardized. So they might have interpreted things that weren't very clear in the specs. So the longer that kind of process goes on, then the harder it is for some of the smaller vendors. We want more vendor participation, right? More open standards, more interoperability. But in effect, if the standard is unclear, then that prevents that from happening. So I think in the good case, what happens is both the protocol system standards are defined as well as the testing standards. So if you start to define the test cases really early on, the experts that already know how the standard works should at the same time develop the test cases. If you define them, then there are test tools that can be used to implement those early on. You get a much faster iteration of trying that out, making emulators, making tests, even if they're not perfect, but you can get a good feedback with going back into the standard, finding areas that are unclear, fixing them, clarifying them, and then the whole industry then can move on. If it's faster, the smaller vendors can already start to participate as well sooner, and the whole process is a lot more efficient.
Well, you set yourself up for this. How do you make it more efficient? Standards are slow, technology is fast. We need efficiency, we need effectiveness. How do we achieve that?
Yeah, right. I mean, I think a good case would be, say, the mission critical push to talk is pretty well defined. That comes from previous. We also talked about GSM, the fact that our phones can talk, anywhere in the world. So I think these kind of standards have been done really well. So the more time you spend on that process and starting the testing early means that you get a better standard as an output, and that resolves a lot of these problems later on. There's one case, I think a sort of less good case would be, I think, some of the P25 ISSI areas. So there's one point called emergency cancel, emergency, you switch on an alarm and cancel the alarm. That wasn't very well defined. Two of the largest vendors implemented it differently, and then other smaller vendors don't know what to do, right? So you've got a situation where it's just really unclear, and so that didn't come out until, that's been going on since after 9/11, right? So, several decades later, we're still troubleshooting some of those things because the tests weren't defined early on. So I think the solution is define the test right at the same time as you're writing the specs, enable some of the innovative test tools and open source tools to come along and start implementing those things as quick as possible, and then, flush out some of the issues.
All right, the hot topic, AI. I mean, we've talked about it, we're gonna continue to talk about it. Is there a role, would AI help make this more efficient?
I believe that, if you look at, even without AI, if you look at a spec and kind of look at how many, musts and shoulds and may occurrences there are, you could probably, get a good idea of whether that was a well-defined spec or a less well-defined spec. So I think with machine learning, you could do that quicker and better and compare to other specs and see, okay, this one grades quite highly compared to that one. Also, using AI, you can generate the test definitions automatically or semi-automatically from the spec definitions and save a whole bunch of time on that as well.
Okay, those are good points. Thomas, you got a microphone? Thomas brings the boots to the ground concept perspective of this also. So some of these questions are going to kind of be geared that way, even though we can bring much more to the table than just that. I'm going to go ahead and say some might argue that first responders had interoperability 30 years ago, but lost it. What are your thoughts or your statements about that?
Well, so I believe that's absolutely true, and I coined a term actually a couple of days ago, just thinking randomly, innovation without consideration. And I'll kind of explain that, but I will say we did have interoperability 30 years ago, and it was because radio systems were largely limited, very limited in capability. One volume knob, one channel knob, maybe one or two channels. And I could argue also that the users of those radios were the most proficient users of public safety radios ever, because that's all they had was the volume knob and the push to talk. I think that DNA got kind of shifted down to future generations of public safety. But they had that. And then, needs changed. Cities grew, the single conventional channels weren't enough anymore. And those VHF, UHF systems, along comes a manufacturer or two and says, hey, we have this thing called trunking. Oh, by the way, it's proprietary. Because of our system, you have to buy our radios. Well, the moment that happened, interoperability became broken. It's my perspective anyway. And since then, we have chased that. We have chased the goal of interoperability every day since. That's why we're all here today, chasing interoperability. The reason I say innovation without consideration is that innovation drives the market, right? It's a natural piece of the pie. However, when a manufacturer says, hey, we can do this and this, but you have to buy our equipment, when they offer that, they don't, when they break your ability to talk to your neighbors, the people that you're helping and the people that are coming to help you, the manufacturers are not taking that into consideration. Hey, we're gonna offer something, but only you can do it if you buy our stuff. You know, the P25 standard, great. A lot of people are building to it. But even today, you have people that are offering public safety DMR systems at a much lower cost to implement. And so when Bob's police chief has to look at, do I spend $1.5 million to build this, or do I spend $6 million to build it? It's kind of a tough choice, but also kind of an easy choice to somebody who just sees numbers.
Okay. So follow-up question to that, from an incident command or an emergency management type of perspective, where do you see the lack of standardization impacting operational effectiveness the most right now?
So when it comes to operational, I think the thing to consider is that when you have multi-agency, multi-discipline responses, what ends up happening is each group brings their own flavor, right? This group uses TAG, this group uses WhatsApp, this group uses whatever. They come in and now all of a sudden they have they're faced with the choice: do I have a training day and teach all these other people my way? Do I learn their way? Do I learn their way? Or do I just do my own thing because that's what I'm used to, and they just do their own thing because that's what they're used to? And so you still have the silo effect. Folks are going back to their muscle memory, and this is what they're used to, and they don't want to learn this other thing while they're under the gun and they're trying to respond to something.
All right, so in your opinion, what is the lowest fruit right now that industry could pick to make the greatest improvement to this operational effectiveness?
This might be an unpopular opinion, but a lot of manufacturing industry folks, they like to say that they engage the customer, they engage the user. And they may pluck folks from here and there selectively. But as somebody who spent 21 years on boots on the ground, I can tell you that based on a lot of solutions that are out there, I don't think they're really talking to the guy, the inept user that, having the menu button on the radio is just too much for them to handle. Honestly, some of the things they're great, they do wonderful things. But I don't think that enough folks in the industry are paying attention to making it easy for that person. And we use the term lowest common denominator in interoperability. We use the term lowest common denominator in programming. And what that means for the user, when we configure something for the lowest common denominator, it means we're configuring something for the least capable person on the team. And I think that more emphasis needs to be placed on planning for that least capable person to be able to use your. Did we die? I mean, can y'all still hear me?
Yeah.
We can.
Y'all heard it on
Line number, we're on line.
So I think
You gotta hold it up.
We're on
I
line.
think not enough folks are offering that with the lowest common denominator, the least capable user in mind.
Okay, so this is a great chance to hand the microphone down to Jeff. Maybe Jeff's got some answers to that. So Jeff, we put you on the hot seat here and say, what is a strategy for your company connecting your systems with other systems in the industry?
Yeah, that's great. And I was thinking, I'm going, okay, well, we do a lot of user testing and that, but obviously no one in the industry is doing enough. We get similar feedback for in our software quite frequently. As far as integrating and interoperability at Jabari. We're in similar places. We want to integrate with lots and lots of different companies. Think about all of the CAD systems that are out there in the market. And lots of people say, have you integrated with this CAD and this CAD? And unfortunately, every time we do it, it's a little different. So we have to take that approach of, I'm gonna butcher this comment, it was in the opening yesterday, but sometimes common standard is, it's better to have a standard process than actually a standard. At least if we don't have a standard set, we have to use a standard process. So we try to take that process approach to evaluate each of those types of inputs and see how we can integrate that into our products. If we look at the ISF that we were talking about before lunch, we're kind of usually sitting at that top layer of cake. And that middle layer of cake is where we struggle and have to really do a lot of kind of one-off integrations. So we've had to over the years struggle with that and really use brute force in many cases. So we have over the last few years put out our standard, which is our Jabari Exchange connectors. But it's only standard on the ingress part of our equation. We have to still modify it with that approach from the third party. So still struggling. Wish I had that magic easy button, but unfortunately, it's a challenge. That's all.
Well, let me ask a follow-up question to that. What are the challenges with developing standards and interoperability? You know, we talk about it, so from the perspective right there, what is it?
I think we're not doing enough of this, right? We're not getting industry in the room frequent enough with the users as well as with other vendors to really define what those standards are. I mentioned earlier my background's in healthcare, so spent many years using standard like HL7, which I knew I could always communicate with another system with. In our emergency management space, we don't see that very often, and we can use the strategy of just wait. And I'm sure Rob will develop one eventually, right? But the just wait doesn't work. So I think these are the types of things that we gotta continue to work together between industry, the government, and our users on.
All right, one last question. As far as standards are considered, in modern software, are they important or imperative?
So I guess that's where the comment of when you don't have a standard, you have to use standard practice comes in really. They are extremely important. However, that said, in at least in the software part of technology, REST APIs and things like that have become easy enough to write as a one-off that we have the ability to work around them, but we are doing just that. We are working around them. So it is extremely important that we can get to that point where we have those standards. And I can't wait for the day that we're there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, to what needs to be done to meet standards. I think the end users need to get involved.
Yeah.
And this is maybe the most critical as well, but the second microphone does. Because most of the user organizations, they don't have the resource or expertise to send people to standardization work. But I think, personally, I think it's very important to engage them because they are the ones using the standards. They need to get involved. So,
Recap it just.
yeah, in my view, it's very important to engage the user organizations in standardization. But they are very often don't have the resource to do this standardization work. I mean, this is one thing TCCA tries to overcome. We are focusing the needs of different user organizations and then try to make this as an event to standardization. But it's a challenge, it's a big challenge. If you leave it only to industry, they have the resource. If you only leave it to industry, you will get industry solutions like that.
I'll give a little example. And this is where, you know, it's not just technology and process, but also the people part. I won't mention the state, but we were working with the state and a lot of the counties inside the state, on something as simple as what is a shelter? In the event of an emergency, you have a shelter, what is a shelter? That's obviously something we can all agree on what that is. And we couldn't, it's not that we couldn't get agreement, we couldn't get even 2 of the counties to agree, right? We did know that it was gonna have a location, right? So that was pretty good, but some of them had beds and some of them had cots and some of them didn't have that concept. And then you have all of these different questions. So, you know, what we started to do is work with those people and say, you know, look, we have the technology, we could have the process, but we've got to get the people involved in that too. So you're absolutely right, engaging those end users, engaging the people to say, let's at least agree with it. Then we could build semantic models and things like that fit all the variables and the things on the side, but getting the people together is super important.
Yeah, I agree. And for 10 years, I was a home builder, and you know, standards and codes for building changed a lot. After the Baltimore fire, and continue to evolve after that. Saved a lot of lives because of that. So I've been a practitioner on the fire side of it, but also as an end user, as a home builder, pulling my hair out because the standard was so stupid. I couldn't put a chandelier above a bathtub because somebody got drunk probably one night and decided I need to change the light bulb in my chandelier, and hence the standard. And so when we look at the standards and we look at this, we need to look at it as a tension bridge. And we gotta have a tug and a pull in opposite direction. Technology pulling one direction, standards pulling the other, but in a healthy pull. And if we pull too hard in any direction, the bridge is gonna collapse. And that's my 2 cents in the perspective of it. But being a practitioner at the fire side, I can appreciate it. But also on the other side, as a supplier, a vendor, you know, somebody trying to sell a product, I get it from that perspective also. So right now, I'm gonna open up the floor to questions. You guys help away and give them the hot take right now. So, me and Mike.
Yes.
Got one left.
Don't kill the mic, Budge.
So we've heard some say that industry is just gonna figure this out. And they should just figure out interoperability on their own, and when they get it figured out, deliver it to the customers. I obviously am at a different point of view, but I'd like to hear the panel comment on that, because we have a nice blend of industry and practitioners up there.
Who wants to take it? Yeah.
I see it's a 3-step process. I mean, first you have standards. Standards are important to ensure interoperability. Otherwise, in my view, it's very complex. That's really standards. Second step is that if you have a standard, if you have developed products, you need to test this product. This is where this is where the labs come in, testing it, because only when you tested it, you can be sure that it's really compliant with the standard. Don't trust the vendors. They will tell you, yes, our product. Test it, or let it test by independent test houses. Yeah? And the third very important, maybe the most important thing is that all this happens, it's important that the users purchasing the systems also requiring the certificate. Then it was tested, then it has passed the testing. If the user are not requiring this, the vendors will not test it. Maybe they will not implement the standard. I think all these 3 steps are important. The most important that the users really ask for standard like solutions, certified standard compliance. I don't know if this answered your question.
Yeah.
I often work with vendors trying to work on conference voice and video conferencing system interoperability. And we've been running in circles forever. Like Cisco has its way of doing it, Avaya has their way of doing it. and you get stuck, there's no incentive for them to work together, like they may, they'll pass voice, but I just need simple participant information. Can you pass that across? But they'll say, well, once I pass it over the wall, I don't know what's gonna happen, so I can't be responsible for it, so I don't want to say I can do that because I don't know what they're going to do. And so, to your point, I mean, I don't know if there's an answer for this, but it seems like it's going.
Yeah, I think again, that's where the standards come in. Like, if there's no standard, that that's the way you have to do that, and each vendor's gonna figure out their own way and try to win that market completely. Don't care about the other, don't care about the completely. So somehow you have to sort of force that. And
This one comment I'll say is what the standard is, a lot of times, like Apple, for example, they'll say the standard is too weak. So we have something that's even better than the standard. So they're not gonna do the standard because it's not good.
right, I mean, yeah, it's tough, right? And I think a lot of it's education of the end user too, like they'll take the solution that looks the shiniest or the cheapest, and not realize something that's really gonna be bad later on. They just can't see that yet.
That's the trap you should avoid. I mean, there's an example from Europe. In most countries in Europe currently use narrowband technology like called Tetra, but there's also a proprietary variant called Tetrapole. Some countries are using Tetrapole. Most every country within the next years migrate to broadband. And even those countries using proprietary Tetrapole technology now, they will only go to standard solutions. They will never ever again fall into this trap. Because at the time when they purchased it, very nice, very attractive, very cost-efficient technology, but they will never ever do this again. So you probably need to also say no in some circumstances.
Yeah, that's the last comment. And what I've seen with like Microsoft, for example, they don't implement SIP or whatever they have their own plan. And then everyone's using Teams, so it becomes the de facto standard, even though they have SIP as in voice and video, Microsoft doesn't use that.
Okay, we've got about 5 minutes. One last question.
No, it's a statement because at least from emergency response, next generation 911 and 3GPP, I believe that we do have standards. Our point has been that we've been working as a silos because, for instance, I will mention always my friend College here. He has been doing a lot of work in California to get vendors up to as close as possible to what could be an I3 standard, compliance. But it is still a lot of work. But if I need to be, as I pointed out this morning in the panel, we need to be that end-to-end, and the end-to-end does exist. We are using set all the way. But it's true, what is happening, and no, it's not just a problem of the emergency services, it's a problem of the overall industry. Everybody's being over the top solution. They become, they are succeeding, right? Because they are providing the solutions that everybody wants. And there are different use cases, but for emergency services, I don't think that we can accept that. You need to make sure that that end-to-end code goes all the way through a highly secure, resilient network. So I think that there are things that we cannot just accept any, over the top solution.
All right, I appreciate y'all hanging out for those last panel. Appreciate all their comments, and I'm gonna end it with this: is when I joined the fire service, I heard one of the chiefs say, "We need to make this so easy a firefighter can do it." And I mean, strong back, weak mind. I was like, okay, gorilla smash, that kind of a mentality. As I evolved and I grew into responsibility and authority, I understood more of what he was describing. So easy a firefighter can do it, because that sets the tone for the operations. When the world is falling apart, the first responder goes in to put it back together. So when we're building these standards, when we're building these products, that needs to be the vision. It needs to be so simple when they need it to operate in those kind of conditions. So simple a firefighter can do it. So appreciate it.
Hey, that was fantastic. And that wraps up the day here. We're continuing with the tour at the BCDC. So if you're going on that tour, please make your way directly to the front doors and get on the bus. And as soon as you're on, the bus is taking off.
I'd rather not.